press record now, 'cause otherwise I might forget, and we don't want to do that.
Good morning, everyone.
All right.
Or afternoon.
Yes, barely afternoon. We're starting on time, although of course we'll give folks a couple of minutes to get in the room. And I'm trying to make sure that the folks who I've asked to are set as co-hosts. I'll go ahead and ask folks to go ahead and mute if we won't really do introductions around, although we may have an opportunity to do that as we get into this. All right. Looks like we're getting close. All right. So I will, let's see. Why don't I do maybe a little bit of housekeeping just as we expect another, couple of folks to arrive. And then I'll hand off to Monica just to maybe help frame the event and introduce her, Director of North Central New Mexico Economic Development District. But as we're doing this, let's see. What we'd like to do is just to kind of keep things smooth and flowing is we'll ask folks to put any questions that they might have into the chat, and that'll give us an opportunity for the folks who are speaking to either address those or have folks like me kind of lift those up. And if we have the time and the opportunity, we might actually ask those people just to share what they're doing, add their voice to our conversation here today. The event is being recorded so that we can share with other local leaders and their partners throughout North Central, but elsewhere in the state who are interested in this broadband topic. Let's see, make sure we don't have anybody else who's joined right this second. All right, and we're at 12:03. So actually, I guess, Monica, I can share a little bit more about what our intent is here today, or would you like to kind of help welcome folks?
Oh, I can say a few words. So thanks, Eric. I think you already introduced me, but I'm Monica Abeta. I'm the Executive Director of North Central. And we've been, having a few brown bags here and there about funding opportunities, specifically from the bipartisan infrastructure law. And broadband, of course, is a very big priority for our region. There is a funding opportunity that's out right now, and it has a very quickly advancing due date of September. So we wanted to do this brown bag today to talk about that opportunity, but also to frame this in the larger scope of what's going on with broadband nationally and in the state of New Mexico. And so I think Eric's put together some good folks who can help frame the discussion. And I know there's a number of different groups working on or potentially looking at this broadband application. And we're happy to assist with that at North Central if you were among those that are interested. So Eric, does that kind of cover it?
Yeah, I think that sure does. And let's see, one of our special guests hasn't yet joined, so we will.
And I wanted to say it, and I don't know if everyone knew this, we're going to go through a little program here. It's going to be recorded, so folks that couldn't attend today can tune in later. But there's a number of us that are going to stay on afterwards if you want to have more of a Q&A and discussion, particularly about applying for the funding. So, those of you who want to have get more into the weeds about the funding opportunities, please stay on at the end, and we can just have more of a dialogue at that point.
Yes, that's great. Let's see. So there's a handful of different things. Let me share some slides for a second. Let's see. All right. Let's see. And just to confirm that we're actually seeing some slides. All right. So just as Monica mentioned, this is part of a series of brown bag events that we've been doing to build awareness of the different topics that are facing leaders throughout New Mexico, often around different infrastructure and the various let's see, kinds of funding and support that are available, and also how can our leaders, how can our communities respond to those so that we can do the best we possibly can for our region and our constituents. All right, we're going to handle a couple of different topics here today. A little bit of where we've been and where we are currently. And I may actually hold off on that for a second until we get one of our guests in the room, but also the work that's been done around preparing for broadband opportunities, specifically around the middle mile grant program, grant funding program from NTIA. We'll also hit some of the work that the Connect New Mexico Working Group on Regional Planning and Community Engagement has been doing with some of the guests, some of the folks who are on the line. There are additional community resources that people have been and organizations have been putting together. Both DoIT, the Office of Broadband Access and Expansion, and other groups, some of whom are represented on the call, have been doing a lot of work to make sure that communities have information that they need, but also that when they're working together and when they're moving forward, they have ways to report that and ideally even share those stories. We also created some space for if there are people who'd like to meet after we've talked about some of these opportunities and some of the resources available, to have an opportunity for people to have an ongoing discussion, have that happen today, because oftentimes, as I think many of us know, you'll have a great meeting, you'll start a great conversation, and somehow in the planning for that next conversation, that next meeting, that can drag on a little bit. And if it doesn't happen, some of the opportunities we have really are weeks and days instead of months and months. So we want to make sure that there's an opportunity for people to have those further conversations. Let me just check and see. Let's see who we've got in the room. I'm going to stop sharing for a sec. All right, great. So I'm wondering, I'm going to call a little bit of an audible. I'm wondering maybe if we can jump into the section on the preparation for grants with Jenny Jackson and our director, Monica Beta. Jenny, would you be able to jump in on that right now and I do a little bit of an introduction?
Yeah, sure, Eric. Preemptively, my internet's being a little funny today, so hopefully I can stay on this and everyone can hear me, but I'm happy to try.
All right, that sounds good. Well, sounds pretty good. And you know, I think for a lot of the different meetings around this topic, you know, we're dealing with the challenges that we're trying to address, right? You know, we have spotty internet. Some people are, you know, they're doing these meetings and they're calling in from a parking lot. They're calling in from outside a library or wherever they can find a hotspot. So this is definitely the challenge that we're working on. Another challenge is the folks that really can't even access these kinds of programs. So how do we get those in-person meetings and how do those work together with the online meetings that we've had? So by way of introduction, we've already introduced Monica, but Jenny is, let's see, she's a grant professional. She's got experience in a number of these different kinds of systems, whether it's broadband, water, other kinds of infrastructure. She helped write a couple of the key reports that are being referenced around how we deal with these infrastructure changes, particularly around issues around rural access to broadband. And so she's been, struggling with the right term. She's been sort of retained as a grant writer for North Central New Mexico Economic Development District to help with some of these different projects. So let's see, I'm not sure if there's anything else that I left out, but if there's anything else that we should add to make that a little more comprehensive, please do so.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, as Eric mentioned, I'm a grant writer. I've been retained by North Central to support grant writing for member entities. So some of you may end up working with me closely on grants if you reach out through North Central's new grant writing program. I've done a fair amount of work on economic development, workforce training, and infrastructure issues, especially in the last couple of years. And I anticipate that's going to continue with all of the funding that's out there. I wanted to focus attention on, Monica had mentioned and Eric had mentioned, the NTIA Middle Mile Grant. Eric, I don't know if you shared, excuse me, I'm getting over a cold. I don't know if you shared the broadband grant opportunity summary with the group.
I have not yet.
Follow up after this call.
Yeah, I'll put that in the follow-up notes, yes.
Yeah, that would be great. But let me just, I can just share my screen and pull it up. So Monica had asked me to put together a summary of open major grant opportunities. And there's a number of things open right now. The one that I think probably everyone would be most interested in that is competitive is the NTIA Middle Mile Grant Program. So that's to install middle mile infrastructure. I know that we've talked to a couple of groups in the North Central region already about this, and I'm sure others may be interested. The deadline may seem like it's far away, September 30, but it's close because NTIA is pretty long, pretty technical proposal and pretty data heavy. So the awards are up to $100 million. But the catch on that is that there needs to be 30% match. So I imagine that would be like for a lot of the communities, the limiting factor on how much you could request is like how much match you can come up with. And it's for projects for up to 5 years. A wide variety of entities are eligible to apply for this. So I imagine they'll be getting a lot of interest in this from a number of different groups. The main thing to say about this is, and this goes for any broadband grants that you would be applying for, and I've talked with Eric about this too, lead with the data. So the FCC produces access maps, and this DoIT produces their own New Mexico internet access maps. So when planning out a project, if you're interested in going for this one, start there with the maps, where the service gaps are. I recognize that the maps are notoriously not very accurate, but they are the best that we have to work with at the moment. FCC, the federal government, is working on supposedly better maps that will be coming out in the fall. Unfortunately, after this deadline is when they're likely to be released. So that's my big recommendation, is look at the maps. And I have a hand raised. Luis?
Yeah, my name is Luis Reyes with Kit Carson. Jennifer, on this NTI middle mile, are these, do you have to have open access or allow open access? Do they have rules around who can, let's say Kit Carson, the co-op applies for it, wins, and then other providers want to, or other providers want to get on the network, because that seems the most logical, is then to make it a regional asset. Are there rules around that? Because that seems to, after you get the award, it's hard to get it on someone else's network.
I want to say yes, but I'd need to go back and look to check on that one criterion. We can follow up for sure. But yeah, I believe they want this to be, as equitable and accessible as possible.
Excuse me, Jennifer, it's Diane Lindstrom with PSFA. Luis, we work around each other a lot. I don't think we've met directly. I work for Ovidio Villarica.
Oh, okay.
And so we're working very hard with the Office of Broadband on applying for a statewide grant to this program. And yes, it does require open access.
Okay, because I think that's very important to be able to really leverage and address the gaps in rural areas, is that we don't overbuild each other.
Yes.
And that we kind of share on these type of projects. So thank you, Diane.
And thank you for the question, because I think it's extremely important.
Yeah, and your two comments segue into what I was going to talk about next. Speaking to the potential stakeholders and beneficiaries of your proposed project, so that you're not overlapping with someone else, and that New Mexico puts together a proposal or a group of proposals for this opportunity that look well thought out, and that potentially connect to each other in a way that makes sense, so that it doesn't look like different communities aren't speaking to each other, different providers aren't speaking to each other. I think that will be important to ensure New Mexico's competitiveness for these funds. Kelly has a raised hand.
Hi, everybody. My name's Kelly Schlegel. Let's put my video in for a second here. Hi, everybody. I'm the new Broadband Director for the state. And Jennifer, thanks for showing all this. It's really good for everybody to know. But one thing I did want to mention, if you are thinking of applying, the state is trying to put together collaboration so that we have a stronger application with people working together. And we've been also working with the New Mexico Fiber Network, willing to work with others. But it's possible we could do something like form a nonprofit or something of that sort that kind of is the face, but it would show that we have a state coordinated middle mile plan instead of just everybody applying separately. We were thinking we're more powerful together than apart. So if you're thinking of applying and you like that idea, just go ahead and contact me and we can put you in contact with the right people. If you don't like that idea and you want to apply for yourself, you're more than welcome to do that. But we did think that maybe a collaborative, everybody working together would be a stronger and more compelling application for the NTIA than everybody just going separate. So just wanted to kind of say that's what we're putting together right now. And we have a engineering company called Finley helping us to figure out that strategy and that design.
Thank you,
Okay.
Kelly. I'm glad you're on this call and to hear from you. What you've been working on in your month or so in the
2 weeks.
broadband access.
Yeah.
Um,
I've been here 2 weeks.
Oh, 2 weeks. Okay. Yes, you're very short time in your new position. I'm glad that you're there. I think, the timing is good for helping to organize this. And I'm glad to hear that the state is trying to come up with a strategy to help organize the potential interested applicants so that there isn't the overlap and the competing for potential resources. Could you share your contact information with the group? Oh,
Sure. Do you want me to put that in the chat?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, I'll put it in the chat. Thank you.
Yeah, and one thing I did want to say in that is I think it's important to get a comprehensive overview of the potential applicants, where the interest lies, where the needs are based on the service maps. And then if it does make sense for different portions of the division to be broken out and have different lead applicants for, whatever reason, because Kit Carson needs to, it makes more sense for Kit Carson to administer funds in their service area or, whatever it may be. But having that high level vision, I think will be very helpful for New Mexico putting in competitive applications and potentially winning a lot of these funds. I really want to see different stakeholders working together. I mean, this really is a once in a lifetime opportunity. So much funding to support infrastructure. So we definitely want to help do whatever we can to help New Mexico put together competitive and compelling proposals.
Let's see. Yeah, I'm wondering, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I know that Monica has some recent experience working on an NTIA proposal, somewhat recent. So I think, it might be beneficial for her to spend a couple minutes talking about her experience and yeah, just how complicated and complex these projects can be.
Yeah, thanks, Jenny. So I was involved, back in 2010 when NTIA, and I know Luis was too, so he'll probably have some words of wisdom to share here. When NTIA first got into this business of, funding middle mile broadband. And at that time, we had 2 successful applications from the state of New Mexico, which were, Kit Carson Electric's fiber to the home application, and then the ReadyNet middle mile application that went through the Espanola Valley. And then recently NTIA, as you know, had the broadband, I think it was called the Broadband Infrastructure Program last year with the tribal and a non-tribal component. And there was a collaborated effort with Santa Fe County, as I hope you don't mind if I talk about this, Chris, higher, with Santa Fe County as the applicant to kind of expand some portions of the ReadyNet network and do some last mile deployment for some very underserved communities. And those two processes, you know, back in 2010 and the recent one were a little bit similar, you know, in that it's these applications, you know, honestly, if we're going to submit something regionally, we're going to have to probably start working on this next week because we only have 2 months and that is a really tight time frame. So one of the components you have to have is some, you know, preliminary engineering work done as far as, you know, your route. You also have to have, you know, some pro forma work done in terms of the, you know, how you're actually going to operate the network and all of that. And then, you know, the point that Jenny just made about the mapping, that is a big hurdle because the maps don't really show a lot of our communities accurately. And so sometimes you have to go out and gather data to show that this is an underserved or unserved area. And that can be incredibly time consuming. So, you know, this last grant that we submitted through the Broadband Infrastructure Program, we did not get funded. And I know that we were in the running for it because we kept getting questions back and forth from NTIA. But really, I think, and we haven't, you know, Chris and I have been requesting a debrief from them for a while. Hopefully we'll have that in the next couple of weeks. But I think where the dialogue kind of stopped with them was at that point, because we were not able to produce data to definitively show them that our areas were underserved. And a lot of the providers challenged the application saying this is not an underserved area. So without us being able to kind of counteract those challenges, I think that was probably one of the reasons that the application wasn't ultimately funded. So I just kind of want to say these things going into this. This is kind of not a application for the weak or the meek, I guess I should say, not the weak, the meek. Like if we're going to go after this or want to collaborate with the state, I think we have to really make those decisions really, really soon. It is a big time consuming process. And you want to submit a competitive application because it will be highly competitive nationwide. So I don't know if Chris Heyer or Luis Reyes want to add anything to that dialogue.
Monica, I agree. It's these are very competitive, and I know even since when we applied back in was 10, right? 2010, there was probably handful of electric co-ops nationally. Today, there's probably 300 co-ops. So it's becoming more competitive with more communities of interest that do have some resources. So I guess I would echo what Monica says. If we want to do this in conjunction, either separate or in conjunction with the state, we need to start now, and we need to dedicate the time it takes because there's some people out there working really hard to get their states some money. So I concur with Monica's assessment.
And yeah, Monica, that you said everything is correctly. I mean, that there's nothing I can add to it. The application is not for the meek, that's for sure. It's a lot of work. So I hope that we get some response from the NTIA of what we did wrong, because I thought the application was fairly strong, although it didn't serve as many people as some of the other applications that actually were awarded. But the whole gist of it was that we're supposed to be looking at rural. So I'm not sure if how the government makes that decision of who gets the funding or not. It seems to be on a number of people served. And so I think if we put in a strong joint application for Northern New Mexico, we have a much better possibility of getting something.
Let's see, Jennifer, I'm wondering if you have anything, Jennifer Jackson, to wrap this up. Any final note?
Yeah, after Chris and Monica scaring everyone, I do want to be, a little encouraging that, I think, New Mexico has kind of the baseline status that they're looking for, in that in a lot of areas, connection, like there's no broadband. In some places, there's no internet. There's a lot of room for improvement of infrastructure. And there's a lot of, communities of color, rural, remote communities, like highly underserved communities in New Mexico, to a greater degree than a lot of other states. And so that baseline need, the case for the need, I think New Mexico is in a strong place to make that case. But as Monica said, and Chris said, and Luis said, it's very data heavy, very mapping heavy. So getting started on like figuring out who's going to help pull all that together now is going to be important. And in door-to-door, like household surveys to determine, running speed tests, it can take time. So if you feel like in specific areas of like your potential service area, you need to do that because the maps seem to be overrepresenting access. All of that should get going like very, very soon because it will take time to, get that stood up and get that running so that you have a adequately sized sample to make the case that service is not as good as the maps may lead the government to believe. And Eric alluded to an infrastructure study that I did last year. Eric, maybe you can share that after this call too. I was asked by Legislative Council Services, Pivotal New Mexico, for which I contracted, was asked by Legislative Council Services to do a rural infrastructure study. There's some maps in that document for internet access at the census tract level. So I welcome you, it's a public document, so I welcome you to draw from those maps if those are helpful, or if any of the data in that report is helpful. And it also has, it was prepared late 2021, but it has the typical broadband opportunities. So we're focusing on middle mile because that's the big one that's open right now, but that's not the only funding opportunity for broadband. So that document also has a table that includes other opportunities you might want to look at.
So I see Luis has his hand up. We'll take one last question or comment on this section, and then we'll move on to a little bit of an introduction and some other comments from Kelly.
Okay, real quick, and this may be for Jennifer or Kelly, but on that match, can any of the funds that the state appropriated for state broadband be used?
As long as it's not originating from a source, you should be able to use it as match.
Yeah, I agree. This is Kelly.
Okay, thank you.
Good news. So let's see. So taking a step back, so there's been a lot of groundwork that's been done. I think some of us who've been in and around this conversation have seen several of the different faces of members of the Do It team. But just a sort of a quick catch up and part of an introduction to Kelly is that there's also been a lot of movement really recently with, let's see, we'll get that hand down. There we go. There's been a lot of movement really recently, which includes bringing in Peter Montos as the Secretary of Information Technology, and that was at the end of June. Then Kelly, as she may have mentioned, has been on the job about 2 weeks and is doing sort of a full court press. She promised to hit the ground running and has been doing sort of a full court press in terms of attending some of these different meetings and just working with various constituents. By way of background, just a couple of other things. She comes from leading software and aerospace engagement, aerospace engineering projects and programs. So significant project management skills, some of the things that we need here at the enterprise level. So dealing with really, really complex projects with multiple stakeholders across long timelines. So I think that bodes well for this. Kelly, I'm wondering if there's anything else from your background that we should know about. It seems like you've been part of this conversation for a while, but you're also just coming right in right now.
Yes. Okay, I'll tell you a little bit more about myself, and that was a nice introduction. Thank you very much, Eric. But I did grow up in Clovis, New Mexico, so I'm from New Mexico. I went to college at UNM. Okay, that's where I met the governor. We were roommates. How fair was that? I still have a tick when she's around because she might draw glasses on me or something like that. So anyway, she was always a barrel of fun. But anyways, we've kept in touch over the years. As Eric said, I was 45 years at the Boeing Company in Aerospace, doing very large military defense programs, usually in the couple $billion range, where I had to deliver to the military in cost, schedule, and technical. Let's see, when she called me to take this, I did retire from there so that I could come and take this job. Okay, I was working in the background as a volunteer over the last 18 months in the broadband arena. I helped to form a consortium called the New Mexico Broadband Joint Initiative. It was bringing 16 CEOs and public broadband leaders together, where we might put our brains together and be more powerful together than apart, and to be able to develop larger solutions for the governor instead of just everybody being piecemeal. So I was doing that for 18 months. I also was on a committee that helped to hire Matt as the broadband advisor. We did a statewide, or not statewide, excuse me, countrywide search for a broadband expert. He came from the state of Illinois and has done a lot of the stuff that we're doing in the past. So I'm really happy to have him on my team. And he is really helping us get ready. We just submitted the digital equity planning application on July 12th. And we're getting ready to submit the BEAD application for the last mile on August 15th. And we're working on this coalition, bringing people together to have a stronger application for the middle mile that will be this September 30th. So I do have some background in the fact that in the last 18 months I was volunteering before the governor called me to offer me this permanent position. Happy to be here. It's happy to be kind of the boots on the ground. Matt was not able to come here, so I'm able to meet face to face with people, attend events. I'm showing an overarching plan at the August 8th Science and Technology Subcommittee. So that will be out in Socorro. So if you're interested in that, those slides should hopefully be user friendly so people can kind of understand what we're off doing. Some of my background in aerospace, I did the Joint Tactical Radio System, which is a mobile ad hoc network for the military that can communicate through mountains and things of that sort. I did the family for the Advanced Beyond the Line of Sight Terminals, which was a military communication system, replacement for Milstar. I did satellites. I did docking satellites, something called Orbital Express for DARPA. I did Minuteman missile, Peacekeeper missile, ground-based interceptor, F-111 military aircraft, US AWACS and French AWACS surveillance planes. I've even done some of the commercial side on Boeing, which was redesign of 2 airplane cockpits, hardware and software, and that was the 787 Dreamliner and the 737 MAX after the crash. So I was on the Tiger team after the crash. So many years of large program development, complex engineering, and just large scale deployment. So that's why the governor called me to see if I could come help. And happy to be here. I do have a vacation home that I'll be living in. I moved out of California and will be living here in Santa Fe. I just finished it actually like a year ago, so it's fairly new, and I'll be enjoying living there while I'm working on this job. Brought my husband with me and my son, Daniel Schlegel. You might have run across him. He also works for the governor. Okay, hopefully that wasn't too much. Sorry.
Well, that's fantastic. I know we'll have probably too many questions for the time that we've got. So I'll ask if you folks do, and I may have a couple of softballs for you to start out. But if folks will go ahead, you've done a great job. I love being in a meeting room where people do the raise hand function. It just helps, it keeps the queue working. But I'm wondering, I mean, one of the big questions here is, how do local communities sort of fit in? We're trying to find a way to do that. And I like that you're open to that and maybe helping coordinate or bring that together. Maybe a little bit more on maybe your vision for that. I know there's still a lot of pieces to come together.
There's a lot to come together. There's a lot. I've been really, kind of, I'll just say I'm just now coming up for air. Okay. There's been so much that has been run by me, which is exciting, but at the same time, we've got to sort it all out and do everything in an organized way. So communities are really where it's at. I mean, we have to have every community connected. One thing I'm sort of got my eyes opened maybe was I just thought, oh, just get the community connected. But the persons in the home have to want to be connected also. There's some people that just don't want to learn it, don't want to give their social security number, don't want to sign up for it. So have to be respectful of that as well. And maybe it just comes down to training, or they've got to be handed a device, or maybe there's some sort of obstacle that we have to get over, or applying for the affordability connectivity program is a lot of paperwork. Maybe they need some community outreach on how to do that. But I saw Jennifer on the call. She's really good with community outreach and digital equity. And we have a couple other people on our team, Eva and Kitty and things of that sort. So we're going to really have to bring in that piece. It's not about just the engineering and the deployment. It's really about the partnerships with the communities. It's about understanding each person in every home and getting the right outreach to them to help them do what they need to do. So that part is just kind of an eye-opening for me. I'm thinking engineering. I've been in the engineering world, but really how do you engage with each person, each home, each family is something that's new to me, and I'm looking forward to partnering with people to do that.
Great. We've got one question coming up in a second. Before with that, I'll mention that we've got our sort of a community engagement piece coming up for about 10 or so minutes after this segment. But Gerald, what's your question?
Good afternoon, everyone. Gerald Baca with ReadyNet. Just wanted to extend a welcome to Kelly. But my question in particular is on the grant for the middle mile. How are you setting those priorities? Because we ReadyNet, we're a middle mile provider in northern New Mexico. We support 5 tribes, 3 counties, 1 city, and North Central is our cog. They're also on our board. How are you setting the priority? That way we can know if we should put our eggs in the basket with you, or if we should go after the middle mile grant on our own. With that, again, welcome and thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, thanks, Gerald. Well, we would love to have you join us if you want to. Okay, I get it that sometimes people don't want to because they want to fully see their own destiny, but we're thinking there's power together. So we would love to have you join us. How it would probably work, and I'm still working it out through the lawyers, and so this is kind of new, but probably there'd be some sort of public nonprofit that would be the applicant, and then that would have members of the board that would have representation from the private sector, the public sector, the ISPs, so that everybody's, the communities, so that everybody's interests are taken care of and safeguarded. But at the same time, then the money would probably flow to there, And based upon the application on each piece, like maybe, I'll just make something up, maybe Tularosa Communications is doing something in one area and maybe ReadyNet is doing something in another area, that the pieces of the pie would be outlined in the application and those would flow to you through the nonprofit. Does that kind of make sense, Gerald, what I'm saying?
That kind of makes sense. That almost describes ReadyNet very accurately, the way we currently operate. So thank you for answering that. I just wanted to be able to look at that and present to my board when we have our meeting coming up. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right, and if you want to join us, we'd love to have you. If you feel stronger applying separately, that's fine. Just want to make sure we're at least aware of each other and know what each else is doing, because NTIA will ask the state which ones we think are the strongest and which ones do we sponsor, so to speak. So it's good if we work together, whether we're formally together or just loosely together.
Well,
Does that make
would
sense?
just-
Yeah.
I'll at this point, I know we've got a couple other things to come on stage. So I just really want to thank Kelly for being open to join us here today. And, you know, it feels like the team is like now fully in, well, not fully in place, but the leaders of the team are in place at Do It and Obi. So it feels like things are speeding up and the people are in the right place at the right time. So that's been great. One of the things that's come up a couple different times is this: how does community engagement work? So I've been privileged to be part of one of the working groups for the Connect New Mexico Council that's really dealing with, regional planning and community engagement. So a couple of the key members of that team have had different roles in terms of helping their communities, first of all, become aware of the broadband opportunities that exist, and then also starting to form them into groups that can take action. So have a couple different folks. You know, if this were on stage, this would probably be a panel, but so I'll do a combination of in sequence or a conversation. But Diane, I was wondering, well, first of all, if you don't mind, maybe just a quick introduction, but can you tell us a little bit about how you've been involved in getting the word out about some of the broadband opportunities?
So Eric, this is Diane. I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand the name that you said. I had a blip.
Oh, I'm not recording myself.
Oh, no, I just didn't know who you called on.
Oh, I was calling you. Yes,
Oh.
I was because I think, at least in my head, and I came to this actually only maybe January or so myself, but it feels like your organization has been doing a lot of this broadband work, you know, for quite a long time. So I was thinking that you might be a good entry point because, you know, the schools have been so instrumental in a lot of the ways that many people know about this, is whether it's work or that they're kids or that they're working with the schools.
So thank you, Eric. I appreciate it. So I work for New Mexico Public School Facilities Authority, and we are the agency that helps schools to build and expand their school buildings. And I work on the broadband program. So we have brought broadband fiber to all of the schools in the state of New Mexico. We work with public schools and publicly chartered schools. And so the statewide education network was something that was put into law in 2021. It was Senate Bill 144 at that time. Of course, it's been chaptered now. And that required us to build a network that would connect the schools together and to connect teachers and students wherever they are. And so in order to do that, we have put out an RFP, have received proposals that are in the process of negotiating contracts right now for that network. And so there will be a group of what we call nodes or hubs. They're also called data centers. And all of you who are new to broadband, we have 5 to 10 names for every single thing. So we just like to confuse people and stay confused ourselves. So the data centers will be foundational for providing household, business, health, all of the connectivity that the state needs. So we'll start with the schools and the public libraries because they qualify for a federal program called E-rate. And E-rate helps to pay for all of the local area network and wide area network connections for our schools. One of the things that we will be doing and that we do now and will continue to do is work with the Office of Broadband for pulling together information for helping to stand up the statewide education network that will connect our schools together
doing that
as well. So for the regional engagement, we have been talking with schools and local community leaders, people who are interested. And of course, Kitty has been a huge part of setting those meetings up. We set one up and then she ran with it. And so we've talked about the Southwest region. We're in the process of getting a date nailed down for the Southeast region now of the state so that we can talk about broadband. And Kitty, I'd love for you to talk about your process and the goal of the meetings.
Okay, and thanks, Diane, and I apologize that my video keeps cutting out. For some reason, Zoom doesn't want me to be live with y'all. So I sent Eric just a brief little PowerPoint. I think it's like 6 slides that kind of helps me stay on track while I'm talking about the public engagement. Eric, would you mind sharing that?
Let me,
Or is that, would you like for me to just kind of muddle through?
I think I'll see if I can bring that up. I didn't have that that ready to go. Why don't you get started? I know we will run out of time, I'm sure of that. But I'll see what I can bring up. But if you'll just start off, that'd be great.
So as Diane mentioned, we really partnered with the Public Schools Facility Authority in all of the, we called them listening sessions, and we focused on having a listening session in every county with the goal of concluding that listening session by having a call to action and putting together a broadband coalition. So, you know, tactically, the first thing you want to do is make sure when you get to the end of your listening session and you say, okay, who's going to volunteer? You have a few people you talk to personally before the meeting so that you're not standing up there with no volunteers raising their hand. And fortunately, we were able to have personal connections with someone in every county to have them attend and be sure to raise their hand and help generate enthusiasm amongst their friends and neighbors at these listening sessions. And we didn't pay attention to time. We really did make these very personal. Diane would talk about what it means to be connected and the interconnection between the schools and how, you know, this effort is to move forward and make what the schools have done something that's available to every community in the state of New Mexico. So after her presentation, then we, you know, had people get up and really share all their personal experiences, and it was great. In every county, the county manager was in attendance, and county manager got up and shared and said, I think the phone book must have my phone number when people's internet goes out. I mean, it was very personal, conversational, and engaged big numbers of people. We had good turnouts, especially for the sparse populations in the counties we've done thus far. Afterwards, then I follow up immediately afterwards and with the people that have agreed to be on a coalition and volunteer their time and give them some marching orders and connections to OBI and also connections to the Do It staff and Jennifer and connections to, I log them in on the map that shows where the coalitions exist and share that map with them. I give them examples for next steps in terms of, grassroots efforts to do what Jennifer Jackson mentioned, the robust data collection, the really granular community related data that needs to be collected. So as an example, in Columbus, New Mexico, there are so many unconnected people and extremely low income people that have a relationship with the local librarian. So we had a watch party for our Luna County event at the library in Columbus, and people were able to give their input from the watch party, talk about how they have to try to use their cell phone for remote learning and sit in the parking lot of the library, telling those kind of stories. And afterwards, following up with outreach, we were actually even taking a food truck out as part of a partnership with Colores United that has a food pantry and a workforce training program and other things, but they have, as part of their workforce training program, a food truck. So we'll park that food truck in a central location and give away food to people who are coming up to take surveys so we can capture their data, because we can't ask them to take a speed test. They don't have the internet. But get that speed test posted up on everybody's in everybody's emails. How many emails do you send a day? In fact, some of the volunteers I found is because I had the speed test sort of action item in my email signature. So, add that into your email signature, get it on your website, ask your local bank that, to send out messages with their online banking statements. I mean, every single thing that you can possibly do to get those speed tests in, so you can indeed challenge the FCC's maps. Anecdotally, I don't want to say we have enough speed tests taken in Luna County, but what we have recorded in the speed test from New Mexico compared to FCC is light years different. The proof is really there when you can start to collect that data and do that outreach in a very grassroots way. And I do think that the way we have done it thus far in terms of the public engagement really kind of honors what NTIA and also the digital equity grant guidelines states, which is that, reaching every corner of the state. And we've been looking at it from a county by county basis. And if you have the support of the county manager's office and the team, I mean, I see Jerry Smith is on this call. I think he was the very first official county broadband manager hired in the state of New Mexico. I personally am right now helping under a contract for Luna counties while they really look at what their long-term strategy is for having an economic development office that's more robust than what they've had in the past. So those are sort of the examples I can share right now. Maybe Eric can just go ahead and share the PowerPoint that has a little bit more thought out detail than just winging it. But
no, so I think this is great. What I'm going to have to do, I think, is I'll have to send that probably as part of a follow-up.
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I think that's great. And we handled it right now. I was going to ask, is it okay?
Yeah, so, and there's some links in there. There's some links in there that I always make sure the coalitions receive, which is a link to the map and Also there's, for those counties that have the data aggregated in a website that I believe Jennifer is going to address. Are you addressing that, Jennifer?
Could you repeat? Sorry, my internet's a little glitchy.
Oh, should I just not say anything about the data aggregation in for the county by county data aggregation? You're going to demonstrate that for them?
I think we're gonna, because of time, we won't, but I will say that some of the counties do not have grant writers or are scrambling to meet some of the complexities of this process ahead. So whether you're applying for federal funding, middle mile funding, various foundational funding, USDA funding, et cetera, the state is putting together and will be releasing county by county stats that have been pulled from all the authoritative data sets that the FCC is using, which we know may not be accurate, but we're calling them benchmark data because that's what we're going to push back on in many cases. So stay tuned in the months ahead for what they're calling benchmark data infographics. And we do have them already done for all of the northern counties, I think, Eric. So we'll send them out via email.
And Jennifer did collaborate with myself and Diane so that I had the counties available as part of my follow-up the next day. Within 24 hours, they had at least one touch point from me. Within a week, they had more. So, and the message really is, this is an effort in self-determination. The state is doing all the high level stuff, but they really need you counties to step up, county by county and help so that they can challenge some of those some of those data points, because they're allowed to challenge them and they haven't been able to in the past.
And I'll say that I know particularly with BEAD, there's a significant component of community engagement and showing that that's not only happened in terms of bringing together the plan, but also the rolling out and the execution. But I know we're almost out of time, and I've made a couple of promises that I don't want to throw away. So the last person I want to bring up, we may run over. I do want to thank folks who've been able to participate. The recording will be available. There'll be a follow-up email that includes many of the resources that were talked about so far. But I wanted to bring up Danielle Lejoy, who was part of, now I'm spacing out a lot of the different names, but the Broadband Collective and the work around a grant program to help some of the communities put together to help them get going on their planning function. And Danielle, I'm wondering if you could just talk a little bit about what the response has been, some of the need, and if folks have to jump off, thank you very much for attending. But Danielle, if you can join us for a little bit on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Eric. And thanks so much for the invite. I see a lot of familiar faces that I get to work with through the Broadband Collective here. So just to start off, I work for Groundworks New Mexico. We're formerly the New Mexico Association of Grantmakers and the Center for Nonprofit Excellence. We formed under the banner of Groundworks a little over a year ago to be a membership organization for the entire social sector in New Mexico. And we kept hearing, of course, broadband access is so critical. So we started mostly as a funder sort of affinity group talking about broadband, but then expanded to nonprofits. So we've been coordinating the collective for about 2 years now. We have a number of work groups, our advocacy work group and our regional projects work group, which we have a couple of members of here. And then we're governed by a steering committee that's made up of members of the collective, as well as some of the participating funders. So we set up 2 funds. The first is the New Mexico Broadband Equity Fund that's housed at the New Mexico Foundation, a community foundation that serves the entire state of New Mexico. So we fundraised mostly from regional philanthropy in New Mexico in the Southwest, but also we're able to get some national funders to contribute as well. So that's been really exciting, and got some banks coming in sort of at the last minute. So that's been helpful as well. So we had a goal of 500,000 for that fund. We're right under it, but decided that the need is right now. So we can't wait around to hit those fundraising goals. So we brought together a group of community members, some folks in this room, folks that work at nonprofits to sit on a grant making committee in a largely participatory style. We were driven by consensus making, asking questions and leaning into what we don't know for that grant making process. So we put out the RFP in April and we got a response in May of 25 applications from communities. Anyone was eligible, nonprofits, tribal governments, counties, anyone with a fiscal sponsor was eligible to apply. So got those 25 applications. We didn't have quite enough funding to give funding for every single one. And the amount was sort of a drop in the bucket, but a total of 75 for up to $75,000 for each grantee. So we were able to award grants to 6 organizations, mostly counties, a couple of nonprofits and tribes as well. And I'll go ahead and drop the link to who our grantees were and what their projects are in just a minute. But the response we got was a mix of some community sort of ecosystem building, community mapping, needs assessment, all of those good things that we love to see. And then some really critical needs that are immediate, like sort of Wi-Fi extensions, really critical updates for technology in IT offices, for tribes. So we were able to fund a variety of projects, but we were really focused on sort of leveraging philanthropy in some way to be able to help folks get that planning dollars to be able to do what we're all talking about right now, which is get the really critical larger funding that we need to make actual progress. We also set up a technical assistance fund that's meant to help folks who can't manage a broadband equity grant, but need a little bit of support on TA. And we're working, of course, with the other TA funds across the state, but philanthropy wanted to throw its hat in the ring and do something as well. So we'll be revisiting the applicants, those 25 applicants that applied for Broadband Equity Fund, and trying to plug and play some TA funds into those folks rather than asking people to submit a whole new application for technical assistance funds. So we'll be getting into that in the next couple of months. We are really excited to be throwing a broadband summit, big broadband party in September 30th. More news on that later on as that comes together, but we'll be hoping to kick off Digital Inclusion Week and showcasing some of our grantees as well as other partners in the state. So yeah, I think that that's my brief update on what it is we're doing here with the Broadband Collective.
Well, I want to, so we're a little bit over time, but I do want to give an opportunity. First of all, big thanks to Kelly for joining us. You know what, on day, I don't know, day 13, day 17 of her time, and all the other speakers. It's been tremendous opportunity and privilege to work with the folks on the Connect New Mexico working group and Danielle and her group. You know, it's really these groups that are coming together that are making it happen. And there's a heavy lift, but I think we've got, you know, most of the right people in place. We need a few more people here and there. So very thankful for all that. Monica, I'm not sure if you have any last words. I will say one or two more things and I'll give you that chance. But this is part of sort of a series of different, as we mentioned at the top, North Central New Mexico. We invite the leaders from our region, but you know, everyone's welcome to attend to discuss and hear about some of the key issues that face leaders in our communities, typically around issues these days of funding and infrastructure. So there'll be more of those that are coming. We'll share, share a link to the video, I think a transcript and some of the notes that are coming out of today's meeting, because I think there's been a lot of great information. As a few folks mentioned, there's additional information, additional documents that we'll also share. So we will do that. We'll send the email tomorrow and they'll be up on our North Central New Mexico, recently revamped by our colleague Felicity here. We'll send that out tomorrow. Let's see, any final comments, Monica?
No, I'm good. I just wanted to thank everybody for attending. We'll post all that information and get it out to you tomorrow. And that's it. I'll keep it short.
Keep it short. All right, the last thing, what I did with putting this together is I created an opportunity for breakout groups, but I also recognize that sometimes people feel obligated to stay on as long as the call is going, and I don't want you to do that. If you've been part of this meeting, chances are pretty good that you didn't have that lunch, that brown bag has been sitting next to you. So I want to give you an opportunity to do that, get off to other meetings. However, if there are folks who want to stay on and there's somebody else in the room, you should be able to do a direct message to them. But if there's something that we can do to help, whether there's further Q&A that folks want to do, there's some opportunities. Some people are going to be able to stay on for a few minutes more. I know, of course, we've had some people who've had to leave, but I want to create that opportunity. So that balance of respecting your time, but also, if there are people who want to talk right now, let's make that happen. And if I don't hear anything in a minute, I'll just end the meeting. Thanks, Gerald. Appreciate it. Let's see, a lot of information. I'm going to go through some of the different notes that we're reading. A lot of great information that Jennifer Navarez, we've got a couple of Jennifers on the call. I think we were going to have a couple of Erics, but that didn't work out, so that was good. But there's a lot of great information that's coming, again, from a few different sources for different folks. So really eager to see that. For folks who have not seen, and I'll actually also post a location for the Connecting Mexico for those different recordings. There was a demo, I want to say not the July meeting, but the June meeting of the broadband maps that exist that was truly outstanding. Some of those information, the baseline information that Jennifer Navarez mentioned, that's tremendous. That's just fantastic. And I don't think a lot of folks have seen those. So really eager to get those out. And I know it's been a lot of hard work. And I don't know all the people who have been involved behind the scenes. So let's see, thanks. Oh, thanks, Jennifer, for putting that in the chat. Let's see. I'm gonna see if we can make that link a little more live. Let's see, good, that works now. All right. Well, I'm not hearing a lot of people that are clamoring to stay on. Did want to create that space. So really thankful again for everyone participating. Look forward to seeing you all in whatever other venue soon. And thanks again.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everybody.